turn off the light this way or this way. That'll be the next slide, but I'm going to explain why. But I'm continuing this theme because, the question has been raised, why not the mechitza? Why are we doing video? Maybe not, in what conditions? So I do want to go through. So I said, okay, let's see, where do we get our Jewish law from? And so I started last week about the development of Jewish law. Now I get into, well, here's a Talmud Bavli. It's the Jerusalem edition. It's got everything, the kitchen, nuts, bolts, the kitchen sink thrown in. Rashi, Tosafot, the grandson of Rashi, there is Rabbeinu Hananel somewhere in here from the last of the Gaonim of North Africa. Aina Mishpat, which is where you can find sources in practical Jewish law in Rambam and the Shulchan Aruch. My great-great-grandfather Gilyon Ashas, his notes in here. Then you get all the other guys. This is what makes this, it's called the Ram edition, where they really threw in the entire kitchen with the kitchen sink, because they put in every single commentary and work that was done all the time, just about up till the 1800s, when the widow of Ram authorized the publication of what became very common edition of the Talmud. It's got everything in it, runs on 20 volumes or so. Then we have so then I put up on the screen for you. Then we have the, what we call the Yerushalmi version. And it was the one that, it's called Yerushalmi, Jerusalem, but it's in English using the term Palestinian Talmud, but Palestinian has other connotations. So to avoid confusion, we stick to Yerushalmi, even though it was not written in Jerusalem, it was done in the Sephoris and in the other capitals of the seats of the. Right, well, that's the intention. Yeah, although Babylonia is no longer Babylonia at that time, and Palestine is the Roman. It even stops being Palestina, probably under the Roman Empire, even as it's chopped up into other elements. But anyway, it's a much shorter edition, much simpler edition, fewer commentaries, and the reason being very simply that the Yerushalmi is done over a period of about 150 years from the time of the Mishnah, year 200, till about 350, 400. And the reason it's short is because now Constantine takes over the empire and clamps down on the authorities, on the Jewish authorities and their rights to discuss and publish, and so they hurry up and scramble and put it together and get it out as best they can. And it was the Christian, that's right. So it's the emperors that follow him take out an axe against the Jews, literally. By the way, the most popular emperor after Constantine was the pagan Julian, who tried to undo the Christianity, Julian the apostate, who went back to pagan roots. The Jews are backing him, cheering for him. And then, of course, the Christian empires came back and everything went downhill. So we couldn't get a good one out of the Palestinian academies, whereas in Babylonia, Mesopotamia, under the Persians were very tolerant, really supportive of the Jewish community there, gave them a lot of leeway. And so they had more time to develop a very beautiful, magnificent Talmud, which incorporated much, much more than the Yerushalmi. Now, what's the nature of the Talmud is that almost every discussion ends with the words teku. Teku in his modern Israeli on a soccer game is tie. But it really comes from possibly short from an Aramaic term for let it stand. Or as the rabbis commonly translate as an abbreviation for Tishbi Yavo B'Yiteret She'elot Kushiyot. Elijah the prophet is going to come and give us the answer, which means we don't know. All right, so all of these arguments end in we don't know, which is a great classic Jewish way of thinking. So what are our beliefs? We're developing this at this time also. So we have compendia, Talmud mostly about practice, although Bavli incorporates a lot of Midrash Halacha, rabbinic stories, but we have compendiums of rabbinic sermons, we have legends and tales built around more often the Parshat HaShavua, the portion of the week, or other books of the Bible. So we call those Midrash Agada, the examination of that which is told, Agada, bin Chayutel, as opposed to Midrash Halacha, the examination of those things that have to do with how you're supposed to go. So the Bavli has a lot of them. Yerushalmi, they didn't have time. So most of these midrashim are compiled in the land of Israel, where they then pull these together. By the way, it's not all is lost in the land of Israel. The most important thing that we have on the land of Israel after that is the Masorah, is the actual edition of the Bible. That's finally compiled for us in Tveria around 800. Now, that's out of the land of Israel at that period. So we now have recognized authorities after the Talmud. We have what we call the Tanaim, the authorities of the Mishnah, Amoraim, the authorities of the Gemara. Now we have new authorities, Gaonim, the word Gaon, the modern Hebrew genius, sometimes used to refer to a great brilliant mind like the Gaon, the Vilna Gaon, the Gaon, the genius of Vilna, Elijah. That's the Greek translation, yeah, under the Ptolemies, yeah. Yeah. It was considered, by the way, Greek is considered a holy language because the Bible text was first translated into Greek. So in Jewish sources, Greek is considered also a holy language, almost on a level with Hebrew. And the Septuagint at some points was considered inspired, divinely inspired translation, although we have complaints about it later on. Well, the Septuagint, it depends what manuscripts we have, but we know that Septuagint was working from a different manuscript than we have, because there's some where we from the Greek we can determine there's a different Hebrew under, but that's the 70 scholars all. The legend is that they all wrote exactly the same word. Yeah, that sounds good. It's good PR. Yeah. Okay, that's all good. So anyway, so we have the Gaon, the genius, the head of the academy, and then we contrasted with the Reish Galuta, the head of the exilarch, and there are always conflicts then. Jews always love conflicts between the Gaon, the head of the academy, and the head of the exile has the government behind them, the Persian government, later the caliphate behind them. And there would always be conflicts, right? Always conflicts. And it goes down, that kind of conflict between the rabbis and the Jewish leadership, it goes down to a lot of times. There are always new issues, right? For example, prayer. We have ground rules in the Mishnah, it's fleshed out in the Talmud, but we need an formal text so that everybody will have the same wording. We can unify the people. So Rav Amram Gaon, around the 9th century, creates a formal text, and that becomes the base for the Sephardic text. A little bit later, the students of Rashi create what's called Machzor Vitri, the prayer book of Vitry, based in France, and that becomes the basis for the Ashkenazic common text, right? Then we have other things. New questions arise, new conditions all the time, right? Nothing's the same. You have different issues for Jews living in Christian lands than for Jews living in Zoroastrian or Muslim lands, right? So you have what are called Sheilot Utshuvot, questions and answers, responsa. And the heads of the academies issue these and send them out throughout the Jewish world. Land of Israel, Mesopotamia, North Africa, which is becoming an important center for Jewish life. And then we also have formalized philosophy, right? Looking at Greek thought, Saadia Gaon, right? The great Gaon and philosopher, Platonic philosopher. The Rambam, the great Aristotelian philosopher. There's also mystical speculation. Also, like as having Jewish, we find something good from the outside, we bring it in. The mystics, the Kabbalah and so on, the early Kabbalah, probably influenced from the Orient, quite possibly. Hindu, Buddhism, some elements creep in, Zoroastrianism, sure. So we have what are called Hechalot texts. We have the predecessor to the Zohar, the book Bahir, and we have the Zohar itself, presumably 1100, but based on earlier texts. And so we also need to comprehend our Torah, also as we're going forward in the early Middle Ages, as we go deeper into Christian France and Germany, we're going into Muslim Spain. So we need Torah commentaries. In Europe and France, it's Rashi. In Spain, it's Ibn Ezra and the Ramban. And then the commentaries on the Talmud also, because people don't understand the text of the Talmud. They got a nice text, they don't know what it means. Rabbeinu Chana of Kairouan, the first one, Rashi, word by word, Tosafot. And I don't know what it means. Tell me what it means. So now you have a Jewish world. So it's very extensive, from Gibraltar all the way to China. That is the Jewish world. We know the trade routes go all the way back and forth. It's a big world. And we have so much text and literature. Now we're lost. I got my Mishnah, I got my Talmud, I got all these books of responsa, notes and pages, thousands and thousands of pages. How can I find it? What's what? So now we have the text. Let's put things again together so we can find everything. So you have Rabbi Yitzchak Alfasi, the Rabbi of Fez originally, or Rabbeinu Asher, who take the order of the Talmud and then summarize for us each debate. So that I go through, I know where the Talmud is, I know where to find Shabbat, but I got to go through page and page. Instead of here, I come right away to the last page. Boom, he's done it for me. Much simpler. And then he incorporates into it what's practiced. Then there's the first great systematization in the 12th century, the Mishnah Torah, by Rambam, Maimonides, who intentionally copied that word Mishnah Torah, looking at the phrase of Devarim. Deuteronomy uses Mishnah HaTorah Zot, and the Mishnah of Rabbi Judah the Prince, from Moses to Moses, none like unto Moses. That's on his tombstone. He puts it into 14 themes. Sometimes, therefore, it's called the Yad for 14, the strong hand. Ultimately, it was accepted only by Yemenite Jews. That's because he had a great hand in encouraging the Yemenite community. So here's a text from the Mishnah Torah with his signature, actual signature at the end of that text. Summary. So that a text in his writing. Ani Moshe ben Rabbi Maimon. Okay. So Maimon. And as we say, Maimonides. Yeah. And we abbreviate Rambam, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon. Then you have Rabbi Yaakov ben Asher, who comes up with a concise format in 4 categories, what he calls columns, tur. So he creates what's called the Arba Turim around the 14th century. And now you have taken the most important issues, because like laws about the land of Israel that Rambam tried to incorporate, no longer relevant. Laws about kingship, it's theoretical, so I didn't need it. Laws about sacrifice, Rambam tried to summarize some of these, we don't need it. Put aside, we go to more day-to-day, or Chaim every day. There are some general rules of principles of or Chaim, Yoradea, Choshen Mishpat, and Even Ezra. Okay, yeah, those are the categories. And it improves on the Rambam because he gives sources. One of the problems for the Rambam was he gave us the definition, he never cited sources. He goes in and gives sources. If I have sources, I can believe you. That was the problem for the Rambam, and he admits later on, Rambam says, I should have given you my sources. But what's even better is that right on this side, you see this column right here on the, where you're looking on the right side, on the right column, there's a Sephardic rabbi who lives in Sfat, in exile, Spain, descendant of exiles of Spain, Rabbi Yosef Karo, who does a tour de force. He takes every one of these judges, he goes through the sources, and he debates the sources. Why this source? And why not this source? And the argument back, brilliant. Read it. I mean, mind burns trying to figure it, trying to follow it. Then he says to himself, quite intelligent, he says, nobody can figure out what I'm writing about because you only have to be a genius like me, and there are not many. So let's cut to the quick. I got a lot of students and elderly who want to know what to do. They don't have time to read what I'm saying. So he says, let's make an abridgment. Simple, make life simple for everybody. I'll take the best 2 out of 3. We've got Rambam, I've got Rabbeinu Asher, and I've got the tour. Take 2 out of 3. Best 2 out of 3 wins. What if 3 out of 3 dispute? Then I go find a 4th source to settle the matter. So I'm not debating again. I may actually disagree with the best 2 out of 3, but for simplicity's sake, I can't go on and unexpectedly go through my arguments. That'll make life easy. That's his whole point. It was not supposed to be the final decision. The assumption was that's for students, and probably you can't go through this kind of thinking. But you, as a rabbi in a community, you are supposed to go back to the sources. You don't have to agree with me. I want you to go back to the sources. That's what he was saying.
What was the objective of the time?
Talmud is just a compendium of the summary of the debates. Yeah, the summary of the debates without saying, without giving you the final decision. Final decision is up to the local rabbi. Yeah, everything under the sun. So I tie my shoe from the left to the right, or the right to the left, everything. This is what I put, right? Okay. And Rashi goes into it. Do I put my mezuzah this way, or does the grandkids say this way? Do this way, right? That's how we do it. Same place. Where's the problem? Now I'm going to get to that, right? So here's the Shulchan Aruch is trying to give us an easy compendium because everybody, I want something the average person can handle. But when it comes to the real hard decisions, go back to the sources. Don't rely on me. So, of course, once he gets it out, it is about the time the printing is very widespread and everybody has a copy. Once everybody has a copy, who are you, Rabbi, to say, look at this great guy, look what he said. Rabbi is nobody anymore. He's a great Shulchan Aruch, right? It puts the rabbi in his tizzy. So, one other thing that I would say, the Shulchan Aruch has a problem. It's a Sephardic text. It's based on Sephardic principles. Let's find the clean, basic points in the halacha. Until the last century, today was messed up. The Lithuanians messed up the Sephardic academies in this last century. Yeah, wait, let me just finish. So you would go, if you wanted a good, clean answer, you went to the Chacham Bashi, the chief Sephardic rabbi. If you wanted complications, you went to an Ashkenazic rabbi. It's the Ashkenazim introduce a killer app. It's called the minhag, the custom. And they raised the custom to the status of law, minhag kedin. They even have an exaggerated statement, aminik brechta din. The custom overrides the actual law. It's an exaggerated statement, but that's the kind of thinking. And now on top of that, to this custom, the Ashkenazic tradition, let's add another custom. And once it is minhag avodeinu, it's a custom of ancestors, we don't change it. Piling on. Now we add to this the idea of pilpul. We just love to debate. Sephardic moved from the generally Sephardic thinking was I want the key sources of the halacha, and let me move on now to Talmud and to Bible and philosophy. That's the push of Sephardic. Ashkenazic Jews don't bother going back to the Bible. I love this debate, and so I go into what's called pilpul, which is hot pepper, and we use that for hair splitting decisions. Okay, if this and this and this is like this, then like this, and you keep on going. But that's Jewish thinking, but now it's taken to extreme basis. Yeah. This Sephardic much more so. Yeah. The Sephardic rabbis generally were much more involved with the general philosophy of their day. The Ashkenazic rabbis, and because of the nature of the Jewish communities of Central Europe and later into Eastern Europe, were much more isolated from these trends. However, very interestingly enough, many of them were also educated in the yeshivas in Italy. And in Italy, the Italian rabbinate was also getting into the modern world long ago. So in the end of the Middle Ages of Italy, we have the question of organ on Shabbat, playing tennis on Shabbat. So we'll get to the next figure in my discussion, which is that just around the same time of Rabbi Karo in Sfat, in Israel, in Poland, there's Rabbi Moshe Isserlis, who's known by his nickname Ramu, Rabbi Moshe Isserlis, just the abbreviation, Ramu. He's working on an equally great summation because it's equally brilliant to Karo. And then he gets wind of Rabbi Karo's project and says, well, it's a waste of effort. So he waits for the final copy. This is beautiful work. Where's my minhag? We have Polish Jews. We have all of these practices that we have that are developed. And so he makes his own copy with his own notes. And so we get what is called the Shulchan Aruch. The table is set, and the mapad, the tablecloth, says you have a beautiful table. You're missing a tablecloth. You put my tablecloth on; it's a perfect table. That's the idea, because now we have two practices combined into one book: the Sephardic and the Ashkenazi. So if you're Sephardic, you read the big print. If you're Ashkenazic, you read the small print that's after the big print. And it hits the printing presses in Venice, and soon every community has a copy. And it is rejected by the great rabbis of its day because they understood it eliminated the process of analysis that was at the core of Judaism. And so that which the rabbis rejected in its day, the colleagues of Rabbi Yisraelis and of Rabbi Karo, became the orthodoxy of the next generation because everybody had a copy. Everybody had a copy. And so once everybody has a copy, the rabbi says, well, this is kosher, this is not kosher. Who are you to say? Look at this. But I know the sources. Rabbi Karo says, Yisraelis says, that's our custom. End of the story. Right? So what it has done is then it has choked off the debate. Now, further debates go on, but only based on only what Karo and Yisraelis have to say. And you have less of going back to sources. And that starts to choke off things. This is just here for you the copy of Shulchan Aruch. So you can see a little bit hard to see, but the big print in the center is Karo. And then under it in Rashi script is the word Haga, which means amendment. And that is Isu's comments. Okay. Yeah.
So, Karo was when he said, my stuff is so complicated, you understand it.
No, his own writing is very thick, very dense. It's if you have the patience to read through it, the logical analysis from the text is very good. And my brain, it's like it's your brain will burn out as you read it. It's written that way. That's the same thing. Yeah.
Was Karo, his interpretation of was it around?
Well, he's in Sfat, so they are all Sephardic exiles. He is the colleague of the Arid, the founder of the mainstream Kabbalah. We'll say that the Ashkenazic Rabbi Luria. Notice his name is the Ashkenazic Rabbi Luria, and presumably he came from originally an Ashkenazic background. But he's in with the Sephardic exiles, and all the work that is produced by Sephardim, all the fathers, Chaim Vital, and so on. Out of Spain, they're kicked out of Spain, yeah. The 1500s, yeah, mid 1500s. So within a few decades after they're settled, they're established in Sfat. The king, the Ottoman Sultan is very good to Jews, Suleiman. So come settle. I like you back here. I like my Jews. I need you guys to rebuild. The Spanish are stupid for kicking you out. That's basically what he said. Yeah. Central Europe is earlier. Yeah. Yeah. It's for the Ashkenazic Jews. We're going back to the time of the Crusades. For the Ashkenazic Jews, I think it increases a mood of depression. So there's they go, and then from there they're going into Poland. Now in Poland, conditions are very good at that period, but still there's a heaviness in the Ashkenazi communities. The Sephardic Jews, the exile did not come too much later, and they had been much more prosperous and had cultivated and absorbed much more of Christian civilization, Western civilization, as well as Muslim civilization that was not in Central Europe. Central Europe there was very primitive. So there's nothing to absorb in the Rhineland. England is 1215, right? It's all these expulsions are around 1200, 1300. And they're going straight to Poland. Yeah, they're going straight to Poland. So, but it affects it has an impact for sure. It has an impact. So this. Oh, the origins? No, yeah, basically it's or Ashkenazi Judaism, Jews from under the Roman Empire who made their way into Italy, settled in Italy for many centuries, and then we don't know what the reason is. Moved out of Italy northward into the Rhineland, settled there. Exactly where's the center of settlement? If it's the Rhineland, or if it's further, it's a little bit further south in the Austrian regime areas, but they're settling there. And then with the expulsion, they're moving eastward into Poland because Poland is the new upcoming power, the liberal modern power of Europe around the 1400s. They're settling there. 1400s. Yeah, Poland. Barbara Kazimir, King Kazimir. Do you know when he lived? Israeli. Do you know when he was in power? Was it 1340? Right. He comes to the rise. That he invites the Jews in, right? Because that's right. So Kazimierz, yeah, great leader, Poland. We forget Poland was a very advanced society and had a very good constitution and so on. It unfortunately was so advanced that it fell apart easily. So now, just when we come to what becomes Orthodox practice, another problem arises as we get to printing. And we get to the 19th century, and again, the desire to have simple compendiums. So the founder of Chabad Hasidism has an abridgment of Jewish law that's considered actually very good work. It's Shulchan Aruch Harav for Chabad that Chabad rely on. But the one that becomes very popular is written by a Hungarian scholar, Rabbi Shlomo Gansfried, who creates the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. The abbreviated Shulchan Aruch, and later becomes translated into English by Judah Golden. It becomes like the go-to book for traditional Jews. They have it, it's simple, very easy, clean. The only problem is it's a Hungarian rabbi. And the Hungarians are the most extreme of the Jews of their days in terms of observance and practice. The Satmar Hasidim are, it's Hungary, it's Hungary, Romania. But this is the Hungarian community, not the Budapest Jews. They're reformed or conservative, but the Hungarians. So they're to the nth degree. Right? So and so that sort of became the fallback book and pushed a lot of Orthodox rabbis in that direction. No, I cannot say blanket because a lot of Orthodox rabbis now do go back to sources and so on in serious issues. Yeah, but it creates the atmosphere. That's all way over the top. It was supposed to be revolutionary, but like all revolutions become rigidified and frozen. Yeah. Braslaver, I think, still keeps the atmosphere of this early movement. Chabad, to a great extent also. Yeah.
So the Jewish laws essentially developed locally where and then each group has its own castle, let's say.
That's very important. Yeah. Yeah.
So they think
yeah. So you have this, but like I said, for the Sephardic, the local custom is a little less powerful in the final decision, and there's maybe a little more uniformity. Ashkenazi local custom, where you've got Polish custom, you've got Hungarian custom, you've got Lithuanian custom, you've got this little time of this custom. Yeah.
What do they have? They're not in their laws.
It's, Hasidim would do this. They would have the Rebbe who was their spiritual mentor, and the Rebbe would have a Rav. Yeah, I have 2 minutes. and the Rebbe, and then he would have his own Rav, his own rabbi for questions, because it wasn't his business. He wasn't interested in the law. So he would have his favorite Rav that he would go to for the decision. Right? They did get into fights. A big fight the Hasidim had with Ashkenaz, or with the Misnagdim, the opponents, was over the knife of the Shochet. And the knife of Shochet was very important because you had a lot of money invested in it, because the Shochet has to pay taxes to the the supervisor. Well, who's the supervisor? So the Hasidim said, it's not fair that the knife of the shochet should not be as sharp as a razor, so the animal doesn't feel anything. The snag will come back and say you're overreaching, because when you make it thin as a razor, you also make it dented on you. It gets dented on the first cut, and then the second animal, instead of having a fine razor, but it has a bent knife that cuts his throat and tears him open, and he's suffering more. So they get into a fight, that kind of thing. But that's also because who's paying the bill? Your Rebbe or my Rebbe?
Right.
We have fights like that. Yeah. No, that's whatever the Rebbe says. Hasidim say whatever the Rebbe says. So here's an example. We all know that tefillah is supposed to be at a certain fixed time. Certain Hasidic groups daven the Shachris in the middle of the day. They'll do the evening in the middle of everything out of line. They say, why? Does God have a watch? No. So you can see that where they want, they take great liberties, because the Rebbe knows stuff. I know stuff. So I don't even have to go back to the text. I got a direct plug-in. So which makes Hasidim very untouchables in some communities because okay. So next week we're going to go into, shall I do my light this way or this way? Okay, and I'll explain why. Okay, so we got to wrap up. Yeah.
Before you finish, I want to make an
Announcement. Yes.
announcement.
Go ahead, Barbara. Yes. Come to the microphone. Barbara.
No, you can hear me without the
Okay.
mic.
All right.
We need somebody to sponsor a lunch, at least $100. I did it for this one. So please just come over to Carmen and tell her that you are going to sponsor the lunch. Okay?
Okay. So thank you very much. Okay, sponsors are always welcome. Whoever gives more is more praise. Thank you, Barbara, for Kiddush the Shabbat. Let's go turn off the Isaac. Go ahead and turn off the streaming. I want to turn off